Joseph floated within a void. He felt nothing. The wounds that had cut his flesh, the sores on his feet, the dreadful weariness from running and fighting for so long, all of it was gone as he sat within the comfortable quiet of whatever existence this was. "It's pleasant, isn't it?" a voice said from somewhere. Spatial distances were different here, and Joseph struggled to find the difference between ahead and behind. Up and down seemed irrelevant in his present situation, and it all hurt his head, or it would have if he wanted it to. But pain was something that was felt in a physical sense, and the pain he would have felt would have likely just been imaginary in this case. "I remember when Oskin brought us here for the first time," the voice spoke again, cutting through Jocelyn's thoughts. The silky voice sounded familiar. "It was such a relief to be separated from the pains and afflictions of day-to-day life. Some of us were sufferers of some rather serious ailments that could be quite painful. I myself suffered from a chronic blood issue that was intensely painful. Yet when I came here, I felt at peace." "Who are you?" Jocelyn's voice echoed strangely when he spoke, and he realized that the question was a rather silly one. This thought was confirmed when the voice laughed at it. "You know, I've quite forgotten the answer to that question." The voice was decidedly feminine, if such a label had meaning here. "I am part of something that has long since vanished, in the thunderclap that silenced a universe and clove the world in twain. Do you have any idea what it is like to lose who you are?" Again the voice chuckled, although Jolson sensed a touch of frantic energy within it. Apparently anxiety still existed in this place. "Oskin led us here to expand our consciousness. Would you like to walk among the stars? We can do that, you know. Although walking is a bit of a misnomer, as your body would shrivel and die in the harsh vacuum that exists in the darkness between the suns and planets of the heavens. But we can go there, if you wish." Joseph was having a hard time concentrating on what the voice was saying, and so he found that he was unable to respond to what he felt was a question that he'd been asked. "Ah, yes. I remember my first time here, or at least what I think was my first time. It might have been someone else's. It's hard to tell anymore. Anyways, what you are experiencing is your consciousness adjusting to existing outside of the physical plane. It can be very disorienting, but you get used to it. I suppose that's the problem, though." "Problem?" Joseph muttered. His voice echoed through the heavens, and he winced unconsciously at the volume. "Yes. Do you remember what the taste of iced wine on a summer day is like?" the voice asked. Joseph nodded his head, then remembered that he had left it far behind, and so shrugged instead. The voice didn't seem to care what his response was in any case. "I don't. I can't remember what it feels like to feel a lover's embrace, to feel the pain of having my skin cut, the sensation of fear as death looms over me. I am timeless. I am eternal. I am forsaken. Eventually, the sensation of pain is more desirable than this dreaded fog of extended consciousness. Even the things I've described are just borrowed memories from the victims we have taken in your physical world, dreams we have plucked from the minds of those who are sensitive to us. While we can manifest through fear so much easier, pleasure and happiness can help us to deepen those emotions. Hope, especially, is dangerous to you mortals. You don't realize the difference between real hope and bait that is dangled on the fisherman's hook. We cannot feel any of that, for we no longer have bodies. We cannot die, so we do not live. We cannot feel anything except the gnawing panic that we used to be something else, and we cannot remember it. We can only remember the facts, which are only a shell for the truth. We want to be alive once more. We have no fear of oblivion, for we have already become that, and now we wish to return. You will give us that." Joseph felt a tugging sensation, something akin to the feeling of having forgotten some important task that needed to be done, but being unable to recognize which task it is. The tugging became more insistent, and Joseph raised up his hand to ward away the entity. The voice screamed as purple energy shot through the fog that seemed to surround Joseph's vision. He saw his hand, or rather the crystal that had molded to his hand, pass through the blank world around him. He stared at the purple energy, moving it back and forth. It was part of him. He saw a purple strand of light that seemed to extend out of the crystal and off into the distance. He followed the light and saw the blank void open up to show his body. It was lying in the center of a battlefield. Bodies lay strewn about him, and yet Aelmund stood over him, along with a hasty alliance of men, dwarves, and other races of Mantica. It was like looking through a glass of deep violet wine that rippled and pulsated as he stared. He looked to the side of the image and beheld two hulking pillars of marble that had neither top nor bottom, but rather stretched away into eternity. He reached out with his hand and touched the closest pillar. There was a shock of purple light, and Joseph was forced to look away. When he looked back, a long, sinuous crack had formed on the pillar. It was only the width of a hair, but it stretched onto the length of the pillar as far as he could see. "This is important," he felt himself thinking. "Joseph!" He turned his vision to the voice. Shirka now stood before him. His sister was dressed in the comfortable leather she wore when she was off duty back at home? Was that the right word? Her hair was combed to a healthy shine, and she stared at him with a lively, mischievous set of eyes. "Joseph, you would nae leave me here, would ye?" Her face split into a grin, and Joseph found himself feeling something. He couldn't remember a name for the sensation. He thought it might be called relief. That seemed right, but his mind was so foggy. He reached his hand out to touch the pillar again. That had seemed so important. "No!" Shirka's face twisted into a mask of rage. The teeth of her grin turned black and rotten, and her eyes seemed to glow. She lunged at Joseph, or at least his hand, but she passed through him harmlessly, and when he lifted the purple light to touch her, she screamed in pain and disappeared like smoke on the wind. She shrieked out one word as she fled. "Coward!" The word cut through Joseph, and he felt a strong pull back to his body. Something about that single utterance had caused something very real within him. He readily identified this emotion. The voice had spoken of it. It had called it panic. Joseph willed himself through the violet pool and suddenly found himself gasping for breath on the battlefield within the twilight glades. Overhead, purple lightning forked across the sky in a constant barrage of bright light. Thunder rolled in an ongoing crescendo that threatened to deafen all within the glade. Aelmund leaned over him. "Did you find what you needed?" he yelled over the din of the battle and the thunder. "Aye, I think so. Now, we need to get out of here."